you an expert, entrepreneur, or small business owner passionate about helping people through life's transitions? The Fresh Starts Expert membership is perfect for you. For just $55 per month, this dynamic membership is designed to boost your business and amplify your brand. Fresh Starts is here to provide you with business development, marketing, coaching, networking, publicity, community engagement, and more. With an SEO-optimized profile, exclusive press opportunities, and weekly co-working and business coaching sessions, you'll connect, grow, and gain visibility like never before. Are you ready to elevate your brand? We can't wait to work with you. Visit freshstartsregistry.com and become a Fresh Starts expert today.
Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny. And we're so glad you're here today.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Hi. We're here with some very special people tonight. For those of you that don't know, because maybe you didn't listen to a past episode, Dara is one of our Fresh Starts experts and a long time friend / soul cousin, soul sister. And she's here tonight to talk about something really exciting going on. So I'm going to have Dara introduce herself, and then we have James here, and I'm going to have James introduce himself, and then we're going to jump into this very exciting conversation. So Dara and James, who are you guys?
And that feels really existential.
Who are you? Yeah.
I'm Olivia's faux cousin, Olivia and Jenny's faux cousin.
We need a name for that.
I'm a showrunner and a writer out here in LA. And you know, I've been on lots and lots of different kinds of weird shows. I've been on everything from Castle to I Love Dick to two shows that I created. One was called Home Before Dark, and then I co-show ran a show called The Horror of Dolores Roach, which is where I met James Takata, who eventually became my boyfriend. He was the DP on that show. And
we all love James. We're all big James fans.
And we started becoming friends on that show and talking a lot about like how we each got to where we were in life. And he was obsessed with Noguchi, Isamu Noguchi, who I didn't really know a lot about, and wanted to make a movie about him. And I really started going on a deep dive as to who that was, and then also realized that we had a lot to share in terms of our, he was a single dad, I was a single mom. We had like these really parallel lives and this sort of divorce background. And then we sort of started talking about taking those two ideas and making them a movie. So we are now boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know what else to call us. We're like,
it's okay. You guys are adorable.
Committed partners. I don't know. Separate houses and separate
Life
kids and
partners,
separate things. Yeah. And we're making a movie together.
Well,
So
which really is the most, that's the biggest commitment, by the way, that you can have with somebody is making a movie together.
I know. I thought about that. I was like, I think this is actually like harder than like any other thing we could endeavor to do.
I think so.
It might be.
Well, so James, who are you?
So I'm James Takata. I am a director, cinematographer, writer. Used to be a Steadicam operator. I was sort of how I came up through the ranks, through mostly episodic television. So shows like Ghost Whisperer or Scorpion, and then a show called Pitch, Sons of Anarchy, like a whole bunch of stuff. When you work in episodic, you sometimes are on something for seasons. Sometimes you're there for a couple days. So if you look at my IMDb, there's a lot of stuff on there. But the last show I did that was for 6 seasons was This Is Us. So I was a Steadicam, a camera operator on that. Also second unit DP. I ended up shooting several episodes of that show and then directing in the 6th season. And then one of the guys on that show, one of the actors, Jon Huertas, is a is a friend of both Dara's and mine. She worked with him on Castle. I worked with him on This Is Us, and he was the one who brought me to her show. He said, "Hey, I thought he wanted to talk about his character and what we were going to do in the episode I was directing." And he was like, "Hey, do you want to shoot a show for Amazon?" "Oh, sure, John." So while I was directing my episode, I was taking meetings in my trailer in between setups, and the first meeting was with Dara and her co-showrunner. And the thing that really, that hooked me, even though at that point I was deciding not to do camera anymore, was she offered the chance to be creatively courageous. And that is something that I have never heard in my 25 years in the business. And I hope I hear it again. But it made me think, yeah, this is something I really want to do. And so we did that together. We did that up in Toronto, and, we started off as colleagues, and I think I very much admired, the way that Dara set the culture of the set, the way that she encouraged all of the creative players to be courageous. Kind of the whole thing. And as we kept working together, we started to, I guess, think of each other in a different way, and we really grew on each other. And so by the end of that show, we came back to the States as an item.
Yes, I remember. I was getting the text messages from Dara. I love all of that so much.
My sister called him my summer camp boyfriend. Do you remember that?
I love that. Oh, I remember her just saying, we walk a lot. We just do a lot of walking. I love that. And I also want to say that Dara, and I tell this story any chance I get, when I was in the throes of my divorce, literally like the first Christmas season, my show that I watched was Jane the Virgin. And I was literally lying on the couch in my living room in the house that I lived with my ex-husband. And I was so depressed. And I'm watching Jane the Virgin, and Dara's name is up on the screen. And like literally 2 seconds later, she texts me, "Just checking on you. Just wanted to make sure you're okay." And I'm like, what is happening? What is this? Like, this is like weird. Dara's everywhere. Dara is everywhere. So I just love that. So let's
Did you
talk
know
about
that the person, very quickly, do you know the person that I'm doing my NDA project that I can't really talk about with?
Yeah,
is my colleague, Amy Reardon, who was a co-EP and an executive producer on Jane the Virgin, and like did all of the seasons all the way through. So she'll be very happy to listen to this and be reminded.
I love Jane the Virgin, and I love the first show, one of your first shows I think that you did, which is one of my favorite shows ever, which is Pushing Daisies.
Yeah, I love Pushing Daisies.
I
tried to show that to my kid the other day. She wasn't so into it.
It's an existential show. There's a lot of layers there. Okay, so you got together, you came home back to the States as a couple. Where do you, I have a question for you from like a relationship standpoint. To pitch the idea of working together on a movie has to be a little bit courageous, right? So where did that come from?
So the first thing we did together after the show was we wrote a pilot together. And I, that was, I think, Dara really trying to push me out of my comfort zone and encourage me to do this thing. And so we wrote a pilot together, which was, a really fun, I think half-hour comedy that, similar to our movie, drew on some family experiences and stories and things like that. And that went really well. I think, that was the first time I'd written with a partner. And so, the process of handing off a draft, getting a draft back, sort of doing this yes and thing. And once we had done it for a bunch, looking at that pilot script now, it's very hard for me, not that I'm trying to, but to look at it and say, oh, that's my line, that's her line. It all became very, much one piece. And I think that was a big thing that made me feel like, oh yeah, for us to write a feature together and then make a feature together isn't that much of a stretch. Having had that creative experience be so positive.
No, I have a question for you, Dara, and I can cut this or you don't have to answer, but I'm listening to James say that and I'm thinking, but Dara, had your past co-writing partner was your ex-husband.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And maybe you can answer this when you answer your question, is that, how was it different? How was that experience different this time?
Well, one of the things I think has been so great about the experience of prepping for this movie so far and was the same with this pilot. And we sort of the pilot obviously hasn't sold, and we're still trying to figure out what we want to do with that. It may end up being like a cousin project to the movie because, like I said, like he said, there's a lot of themes that are really similar. What was so great about when we were in Toronto was the mutual respect we each had for each other. I truly, if I said something to him creatively and tried to describe something about camera or direction, he could take that and run with it. And I trusted implicitly, and I respected his, tens of thousands of hours on set. And he never really questioned anything on the page, right? It was like, whatever's on the page, I trust that that's there for a reason. I trust your rationale for that. And, writing the pilot was different because I'm sort of the expert at that to some extent, right? I mean, obviously I'm not the expert at the characters that are a little bit more in his wheelhouse. He's not an expert at characters in my wheelhouse, but like it was a lot of me sort of guiding that process and then saying to him, like, and then you'll shoot it and you'll direct, however many episodes we can contractually let you direct. And like, we were very clear about what our roles were, which is very different than it was with my ex. I also think, James is by nature very different from my ex. And so that also was something that affected whether I felt like I could do it. But we did, it was certainly something that I talked about. It's something that we've continued to address. We literally did therapy the other day and I said, like, okay, so the last time I made a movie with somebody, it turned into my failed marriage. So let's not do that. Can we like make sure that at the end of this process, we still love each other? And like the thing is that this movie is this intergenerational trauma love story, right? Yep. Somebody the other day, one of James's friends of friends described it the other day as a middle-aged coming of age story. And it has this sort of, even through all of the pain, this sort of romance in the middle of it. And I think that is very representative of us. And I don't want us to lose that while trying to portray it on screen. So we are both acutely aware that, he also, his documentary that he made with his ex-wife. So we have both had experiences where we've made things with our exes and had it not go the ideal way.
I just love this for so many reasons, but the representation of all of this, right? Like you're talking about making a creative endeavor, together, but actually like this is what a representation for just marriage, right? Like, and the way that you can kind of grow from that. So let's talk about the movie. James, what is this movie you're making together? And tell us a little bit about where it came from.
Sure. So we're calling it California Scenario. As Dara mentioned before, I've had this, you could call it an obsession with this artist, Isamu Noguchi. I like to say the most famous 20th century sculptor that you haven't heard of. When I start to talk to people a little bit more, they're like, oh, he's the guy who made that table, or he makes those lamps, or I've seen his sculptures before, but he's certainly not a household name for a lot of people in the way that other artists of the 20th century are. Various reasons for that. But I was introduced to his story like 25 years ago. And I was traveling in Japan. I met this guy, Masaru Kurahashi, and we were talking art, we were talking film. And he was like, you need to do a thing about Noguchi. And I was like, okay, thanks. Like everybody's got ideas when they hear that you're a filmmaker. But then when I saw him again later in that trip, we had dinner with him in Tokyo. He brought me like 7 books, like hardcover books about Noguchi. And he's like, here, I'm serious. And so I started reading them, and there was so much depth to his art, to his life, his story. I started to understand why he felt like this was so important. For one, we share this experience of being, Japanese American. Noguchi was biracial at a time where that was very rare. His mother was Irish American. His father was Japanese. He had blue eyes. He could never really pass in either country. He also voluntarily went to Poston internment camp during World War II. He had this idea that he was going to help make it into some sort of utopian community. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out. So anyway, it started with Noguchi, and then it was Dara's idea to try to shoot it in his art installation in Costa Mesa. So it's this 1.5 acre beautiful abstraction of the California landscape. And so we got permission after months and months of trying to get in there. They never let anybody shoot there. We got permission, and then and we started writing this thing very quickly.
Well, we had started writing it. I sort of pitched it. He wanted to do Isamu Noguchi's life story, which I still think is something that somebody should do. And maybe this will, if we're lucky, this will be the platform, so then he can make that epic thing that he wants to make. But it would be so big. And they already made a version, oddly, of I don't know who they are, but whoever they are made a version with his mother, the Irish American white lady, at the center of this story, which, is so strange to me because that's really not the crux of this.
Right.
And so, he really had been thinking about I'm going to spend the next couple of years really diving into this and writing my opus. And I said, I'm a little concerned about that because if your goal is I want to direct this as soon as possible and really make something, it's going to take a minute because they already did this other thing. That's going to cost $1 billion. I come from, as a showrunner, and as someone who graduated a producing program at USC, I very much come from how much is that going to cost and how do we actually make that happen? And because he had introduced me to Noguchi, I had done this deep dive on California Scenario, and I just love the title even, right? California Scenario can be so many things. And I said, what if we shot something down there? And then I wrote just a few pages that were sort of basically just our life, right? A little bit of things that we had gone through in the last couple of years of being together. And I was like, it could be this. And he was like, oh, I could feel it. And I could also feel him be terrified because it's so much of our actual lives. And he said, this is terrifying. And I said, I know, it's terrifying for me too. But then we sort of put a pin in the writing because no one gets to shoot here. They say no to everybody. This is a very big deal. We had to lobby for 6 months. I went back and back, back and forth, and finally got the permission. And then it was oh crap, we just got permission and we have to shoot this in, a few months. So we better get cracking. And we're actually going to be sending the final draft, the locked draft tonight to our producers. And, we really love it, and everybody who reads it really loves it. It's very much an intergenerational trauma love story.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, and I've said so much about Noguchi, and that is sort of the background of it, right? But it's not about him, right? He makes a tiny little appearance. We don't even really name him, but it really is more about these two families, these two people, and their kids and their parents and their grandparents, and how did they get here, and why are things so messed up? And
one family is Japanese American and doesn't talk about a lot of stuff and sort of sweeps it under the rug, and one family is Jewish American and overtalks everything and screws up their kids by talking about everything.
Yeah. Which both, I feel and we're going to talk about the topics in the movie, but Japanese American history and generational trauma and Jewish American history and generational trauma, I feel often we talk around it a lot, right? We'll talk about it, but we don't really hear a lot of the people talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons I really love this movie, is because it really got into, you felt like you were really witnessing what it was like for these families to live through these and what the end result of this generational trauma was.
Thank you.
Let's talk about representation for a second. So when I was growing up and had divorced parents, there was literally 2 movies that you could watch about divorce. There was Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Paul Reiser's Bye Bye Love, which we had on repeat and we memorized, and literally started a divorce podcast because Rob Reiner in that movie has a divorce radio show. And I was like, I need to do that. When you guys asked us to, maybe do the marketing for this movie, and we read the script and everything, we were like, oh my God, this is exactly what we believe in. We've been waiting for a movie like this. This is it. And so can you tell us a little bit about some of those topics that are covered in this movie and why you chose to include these in the representation and how important it is?
I think one of the things that's been pretty transformative for me in this relationship is being with somebody who also has kids. I mean, I talked about this in my other episode, hot tip, listen to my other episode.
Yep, we'll link it.
Fresh story. But, I had dated for 8 years before I met James. And one of the things that was so important about that time for me was realizing that I really need to be with someone who has kids and doesn't want more of them. I'm not on that train. But I do love my kid, and my kid comes first. And, you know, one of the things that bonded us and became such an organic thing for us to talk about was our single parenthood. And then as we sort of would dive deeper into that, as our relationship went on and we went through more things with our kids and our exes and navigated that stuff,
Yeah.
we realized how much of what we were going through was actually, you know, patterns that we'd learned from our parents, or patterns we were trying to break from other generations. So, you know, in terms of why divorce, I think the divorce becomes sort of the crux because it's the result of all of these things that were handled differently in previous generations. And how do you make something whole out of that?
Very well said. I feel like, you know, for me, sort of the journey of life through marriage up until divorce, not that it was autopilot by any means, but like, I think when my marriage fell apart, it was like, certainly there was that period of grieving the future that I imagined, right? Okay, that future is not going to happen. But then also the realization of, oh, this future can be whatever I decide that it's going to be for me, for my kids. And it's kind of like your podcast, Fresh Start, right?
Yeah,
and so,
yeah.
so yeah, that's, I don't know where that started, but that's
I love
the thought that came up for me.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many topics that we could just endlessly talk about what you have in this movie. There's a lot of beautiful storylines. There's mother, daughter, mother, son, father, daughter, father, son, you know, self-harm, divorce, marriage, falling in love, right? All of these beautiful, the creativity, art. So that being said, we need to make this movie happen, right? We gotta make this movie happen. So what can we do? How can we support you in making this movie?
Please look up California Scenario on Seed and Spark. That is where our fundraising is. You can also...
I'm sure there's a link here or here.
There'll be a link. There'll be a link all over in the show notes.
All over the thing. Find us at California Scenario Film on Instagram and also on Facebook, and where else? You can find us on LinkedIn. There are all kinds of ways to donate. You can donate time. You can donate. We had somebody today reach out to us. The most moving story, Olivia. I'll actually let James tell this story. I mean, we'll let the person remain anonymous, but she was so moved by the idea that she converted points into an Instacart card so that we can feed our crew. You know, there are so many, even just retweeting. Do we do that anymore?
We share, just sharing.
You know,
this is why I'm the marketing director for this movie.
Thank you. Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, what is the internet? But yeah, sharing everything and getting the messaging out far and wide and telling your friends, and, you know, even sharing, you know, James did an amazing video that's on YouTube that sort of explains what it is we're doing. Share that. Share.
Yep.
Anything you can give is helpful.
And look, it's been a tough time for a lot of us. And so, like Dara said, it doesn't have to be money. On the crowdfunding, if you just give us a follow, when we get to 250 followers, it unlocks like all these perks that Seed and Spark will give you. They'll pay for festival submissions. They'll give you discounts with vendors that they're partnered with. And then if you get to 500, you unlock even more. So, and that doesn't cost anybody anything, right? It takes you like under a minute to go through that link and just press follow. And that does so much for our campaign. Or even if you give $5, like that's the beauty of crowdfunding, right? Like if everyone who hears this and thinks like, oh, that'd be cool, just gives $5 or a follow, like we're well on our way. So it all matters.
Will you tell Olivia about the story from today? Because I think it's beautiful.
I was just right before Dara got here. I got this direct message from somebody who I've never met in person, and they'll remain anonymous, but they shared this personal story and why they felt so moved by our film
about their own domestic abuse and survival.
Yeah, being a parent, escaping domestic abuse, and hey, it's been a tough year, but like, here's what I can do. I converted these points and here's $100 to use towards like your craft service or whatever. It was just so moving. And I've found that those types of interactions so far, where some friend who I haven't heard of in a long time, reaches out and just says, hey, this is cool. Like, I'm so happy you're doing it. that it's so encouraging, and it feels like very connected to everybody out there. So it's really cool.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And as the person that's doing the social media, I'm just going to go follow, California Scenario Film everywhere and reshare the post as much as you can. Well, we will have all the links in the show notes. And if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me or Dara or James.
Yes.
We're so excited. This movie is going to happen and it is going to be big. And we're just thrilled that the two of you are doing this, and your energy and your love and your passion for each other, but also for filmmaking and for history is so clear in this. And so we're just so excited. Thank you both for taking the time and chatting. Please, please, please go donate $1, $2, $3, $400, anything you can. And if you have questions, reach out. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you. And thanks for being part of it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. A Fresh Story podcast is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again, from home items to Hype Team and everything in between. You can learn more and read today's show notes at afreshstory.com.
Are you a freelancer, solopreneur, writer, creative, or professional looking to achieve your goals within a supportive community? Have you found that working from home on your own gets lonely? That you're missing the accountability and community of a positive workplace environment? We understand. And we're so excited to introduce you to the Fresh Starts Collective. For just $35 per month, gain access to 6 daily offerings a week, including virtual co-working, open office hours for business coaching, accountability sessions, and networking opportunities. Enjoy expert workshops, monthly events, and an extensive content library. Connect with marketing, design, and writing professionals to brainstorm and grow together. Surround yourself with accountability, community, and growth. Elevate your journey with the Fresh Starts Collective for only $35 per month. Visit freshstartsregistry.com and join us today.